What up, Wizards? It's your favorite Magic Channel's favorite Magic Channel, back with Igby again. You've been here like every preview season video this time around, bud. Didn't realize you were such a Final Fantasy fan. Or are you a Papa fan? Is that really what's going on here? Did you sub to the sandwich, buddy? Anyway, we got like 12 Final Fantasy cards to show off to y'all today. And I know that doesn't sound like a lot compared to the like 50 plus that we got to see yesterday, but it all culminates in maybe the hypest card from the entire set so far, at least some people's minds. We will talk about it, and everybody else is, but we've got 11 other cards to get through first, including 3 commons. And those are Magic Pot, Summon Fat Chocobo, and Summon Choco Mog over here. Now, Magic Pot is 3 mana, an artifact creature goblin construct. That's neat. Whenever it dies, you get a treasure token, and you can pay 2 and tap it and exile a card from a graveyard. Oh, the old Magic Pot. When you're finished smoking, it gives you a token. That's not too bad, right? I guess this is kind of neat and limited, but I'm not too inspired by the design. I did explicitly say I wanted to see this guy, though, so I guess I'm just happy that he's here. But we'll move on to Fat Chocobo over here. I like that this card exists. It's not an amazing Magic card, but it's definitely here, and I support that. 5 mana, 4 and a green for a 4/4 enchantment creature Saga Bird. On Chapter 1, you get to Wark. Make a Chocobo. It's one of these 2/2s that has the landfall ability, where it gets +1/+0 till end of turn. And then on Chapters 2, 3, and 4, you get Kerplunk. Creatures you control gain trample until end of turn. So kind of attacks for 2 turns, theoretically, as a 5 mana 4/4 trample that also puts a 2/2 into play. So I guess the first turn that it attacks, maybe you played a land. So now it's attacking for 4, 5, 6, 7 with trample at, again, the very least, even if you have no other creatures on the table besides the one it provided you and it. So in limited, I guess that's kind of cool. You know, a turn over turn trample effect 3 turns in a row might be pretty cool if you're trying to bust through. So I kind of like this as an overrun effect in that environment, but apart from that, it's just not a really great Magic card, but it does put a lot of PT on the table for you in that environment. But Choco Mog, you could almost say the same thing for, man. This is 3 mana, 2 and a white for a 3/3, and all 4 of its chapters are Stampede. Other creatures you control get +1/+0 until end of turn. So it will attack twice, again, look theoretically, and when it does so, it'll be a 3 mana 4/3 both times. That also anthems like the rest of your team when it attacks, or not even when it attacks, just guaranteed. Like they could kill it with the trigger on the stack, and you still get an anthem for the team. So actually pretty cool, man. Like not too shabby. A little bit better than Battle Cry, I guess. And honestly, again, even though it will eventually die, 3 mana for a 3/3 is a fine deal. And again, it will attack for more power than that. So not horrible, but again, refined just to, or confined really, just too limited. Let's move into the uncommons. A couple of, again, uninspired ones to kind of start the day here, but we'll move into better cards soon. Il Meg Pixie and Relentless XATM092 start things off in the uncommon slot. Pixie is 2 mana, 1 and a blue for a 2/1 fairy with flying. Whenever it attacks, surveil 1. Okay, I guess I'll play that unlimited from time to time. You know, 2 mana, 2 power flyer that does a thing when it attacks, fixes my draws, gets me closer to my bomb. That's probably a decently playable blue too, but Relentless XATM092 costs 6 mana for a 6/5 artifact creature, which is also a robot spider. This creature cannot be blocked except by 3 or more creatures, so super menace. It also has an activated ability here that costs 8 mana. Return this card from your graveyard to the battlefield tapped with a finality counter on it. I feel like it didn't necessarily need to have the finality counter, you know, but still, this does come back at least once if you have a lot of mana, and in limited, this will probably go through unblocked a good bit of the time, unless they absolutely want to destroy it, right? But if they do destroy it on like triple blocks or something, then it'll come back at least once. So in some ways, you could look at this sideways as like a, is this a removal spell as a butterfly floats by? You know, but it's definitely just kind of a normal little limited card that I do like that any deck can play. 6 mana for a 6 power guy isn't the absolute best deal, but when you add in the super menace and the replayability, like we're kind of starting to talk. And to be clear, I'm specifically talking still about limited here. This card will not see the light of the overworld anywhere outside of that format. But speaking of the overworld, we'll look at the top 2 uncommons of the day. That's right, there's only 4. I'm going to look at Travel the Overworld, as well as Eden Seat of the Sanctum, a card that I actually put on screen yesterday and then just completely missed as far as the review. So we'll talk about it in a second, but Travel the Overworld, I'm almost a little excited about. This is 7 mana, 5 and 2 blue, sort of, for a sorcery with affinity for towns, and you get to draw 4 cards. So if it's your 4th turn and you're playing your 4th town, you get to cast this for 3 mana. Okay, even if you're just playing your 3rd town, I guess you still get to cast this for all of your mana on turn 4. I don't think you want to take your shields down in most decks to do that, and I really think that most decks won't play this until they can play it for 2 mana, but it is worth pointing out that you can eventually play this for just 2 mana, and it works with like the explosive vegetation in the set that goes and gets a couple of towns. That ain't bad on turn 4 into this on turn 5, because you probably will be able to cast it for just a couple of mana then. And draw 4 is kind of busted, man. That's really decent. So this just looks like a kind of normal little set mechanic card for limited, and it probably mostly is, but I think it's pretty good there if you can get the right number of towns. That said, man, if there is a decent towns deck in standard, which I don't really put a lot of money into that idea, but just in case there is, this will be a card that almost certainly sees play, because 4 cards is like a lot of cards. Am I wrong? Anyway, Eden Seed of the Sanctum over here with prettier art than it had yesterday is sorry, whoever did the art yesterday, but still, this is gorgeous art here. This is a town that enters play untapped and taps for a colorless mana. You can pay 5, tap it, and mill 2 cards. Then you may sacrifice this land. When you do, return another target permanent card from your graveyard to your hand. So it's effectively going to cost like 6 mana sources, right? Because you have to tap it down to actually do this. And that's kind of a lot. That's so much. People always tell me like, hey, Devin, Commander 6 mana is literally like 2 mana. It's nothing. You just got it laying around. It's like a half a mana. Who cares about 6 mana? And then other times when I say that a 6 mana thing is playable in Commander, like on the 10 cards rated series, the whole comment section is people like, dude, 6 mana is too much in Commander. So I have no idea. I have no idea anymore. 6 mana effectively to get this thing done might be okay, depending on what you're returning back to your hand, obviously. So I think there could be some better options, mostly in Commander, but this has a great spread of options. It's not returning specifically a creature or an artifact or something like that to your hand. You can get whatever you want. It could even be a boat. So there's some things I do like about this, despite the really high cost. But let's get into the rares. We got 5 of them today, but one of them is definitely a little bit more hyped up than the other ones. That said, I kind of like some of these. Golbez Crystal Collector up first. Did you guys know Golbez was just a 2 mana 1/4 the whole time? Were you guys aware that the whole time Golbez just a 2 mana 1/4? Should have been a lot easier to kill. This is just a blue and a black for a legendary human wizard. Whenever an artifact you control enters, surveil 1. At the beginning of your end step, if you control 4 or more artifacts, return target creature card from your yard to your hand. Then if you control 8 or more artifacts, each opponent loses life equal to that card's power. Okay, so now we're starting to talk. Just a little bit at the end there, I think that controlling 4 or more artifacts for the first ability, the Raise Dead every turn ability, is not too many artifacts, and it's also like really good flavor. If you have all 4 crystals, bring a thing back from death, that, again, fantastic flavor. But all things considered, if you end up having 8 artifacts, then suddenly you can deal a lot with this during an end step, and it works pretty well with like the Ishtola that we've already seen, the mono blue Ishtola that gives you 2 end steps, and then you get to do a bunch of damage to everybody or make them lose a bunch of life, whatever. But yeah, this could be really, really fun in Commander. As a 2 mana 1/4 with a decent static ability, I think there might be some standard life in it if blue-black artifacts is a deck. But the problem with blue-black artifacts and trying to play it with like Winter, you guys remember Winter from Ether Drift looked like a pretty good blue-black artifact guy? One of the worst things about that deck is one of the worst cards in the deck when you try to play him is Winter, because he's not an artifact. And like Golbez has kind of the same issue here, but he'll be able to fix your draws. He'll be able to dump stuff in your yard if you want stuff in your yard. So there's some pretty redeeming stuff about this dude, but again, I just don't know that he's standard playable. If you want to brew around a cool commander though, he might be your guy. So let's move on to a card that I think is supposed to be tuned for standard, but I'm not sure it gets there, man. This is Summon Brynhildr. This is 2 mana, 1 and a red for a 2/1 Saga Knight enchantment creature. On chapter 1, you get Chain. Exile the top card of your library. During any turn you put a lore counter on this saga, you may play that card. But it's also got Gestalt mode on chapter 2 and 3. When you next cast a creature spell this turn, it gains haste until end of turn. So 1 creature per turn gets haste on 3 and 4 if you play this on curve, and that could actually be really good, especially considering that it effectively draws you a card for 3 turns. Not too bad, you know. If it draws you a creature off the top of your library, then obviously if you play it while this thing's in play, it'll get haste. So kind of think that's really cool. There's some neat things about this guy, but I think we just have better 2-drops in red and standard right now. It all kind of depends on what happens after rotation, but even after rotation, we'll still have mice as kind of a build-around package for mono red, and I don't know that they're necessarily going anywhere. Like, we won't lose Screaming Nemesis to rotation, so again, I'm not sure that we're building those decks any differently than we already are a year from now, so it's kind of sad because I do think, again, in some ways, in some standards, this dude might be able to see some play. An aggro card that replaces itself immediately and gives you some haste with some power toughness. You know, there are times I think we'd be having a big boy discussion about this card, but those days might be gone. Or maybe I'm wrong and it's disgusting. I don't know. We'll see. But Summon Guardian Force Cerberus is up next. 4 mana, 2 and 2 red for a 3/3 enchantment creature. Saga Dog. It's a Saga Dog. On Chapter 1, you get to Surveil 1. Not inspired, right? But on Chapter 2, you get to double. When you next cast an instant or sorcery spell this turn, copy it. You may choose new targets for the copy. Okay. And then on Chapter 3, you get triple. When you next cast an instant or sorcery spell this turn, copy it twice. You may choose new targets for them copies. It's a pretty good boy, honestly. He's got to stay in play for a couple of turns to really crank out value for you. But dang, son. If he is in play, even for one turn to get double, then that could be potentially outrageous, you know, truly outrageous, like Gem and the Holograms, the Holograms. Anyway, ruined that reference, but still, no one got it one way or the other, so I guess it doesn't matter, no harm, no foul. But yeah, just doubling a thing could be pretty gross. When you get Chapter 2, you'll have all your mana available to use, but, you know, if you get Chapter 3, you'll have all your mana available to you as well. So I just, even like a regular old dry burst lightning at that point does like 6 damage. It's not bad, but anything that like draws you cards or does more damage, like a bolt effect or something. I'm gonna cast Flame Rift and deal 12 to everybody. I don't care, YOLO. You know, there's some things that could actually pop off pretty nasty with this card. Tripling a spell is just gross if you can protect it. But next to last rare of the day, and then we'll get to something truly outrageous. Truly outrageous. Wandering Minstrel is 2 mana, a green and a blue for a 1/3 legendary human bard. Land you control, enter untapped. The Minstrel's Ballad. At the beginning of combat on your turn, if you control 5 or more towns, create a 2/2 elemental creature token that is all colors. But this also has a Wooburg ability on your commander. Pay 3 and Wooburg. Creatures you control get +X till end of turn, X being, of course, the number of towns that you control. I kind of feel bad for this guy because he's like, obviously, for commander, very likely. I mean, we'll talk about his standard playability in a second, but you know, there's probably not much of it apart from the fact that let's go ahead and do it. He's relatively cheap to cast. He's just 2 mana to get on the table, and he says land you control, enter untapped, which despite the a huge variety of words on the card, there's so many words on this card, that first line of text is probably the most important in competitive environments, and honestly, it's probably the most important one in Commander, too. But if you've got some ramps or something, then maybe you can get to the 2/2 a little bit faster, right? But you're just getting like 1/2/2 per turn, unless you have ways of like panharmoniconing it or something. I don't know what you do, but you know, one way or the other. This could give you some extra 2/2s with some tricks up your sleeve, but really the land you control, enter untapped is probably the most attractive thing about the card, all things considered. But it's cool to have a town commander. The only problem with that is like, how many towns we really got? You know what I'm saying? I guess maybe we have like 20 towns or something, but is that really enough to make the deck work? Honestly, maybe. with like crop rotations and other things that can just go get towns or whatever, then like maybe you could cook something, but I'm pretty sure it's just on the back burner and you're going to forget about it. It's going to burn. Probably not going to taste very good once the soup's done. So I just don't really know about this thing all just in general, but at least it's a cool design. I like cool Magic cards. Sometimes a lot better than powerful Magic cards. If every Magic card was powerful, imagine the complaints we'd have about power creep. We already have so many power creep complaints. Do we want more? Do we want every single card in the set to be standard playable and like the best commander we've ever seen? No, that would be ludicrous. Sometimes cards just have to be cool, and this one pulls that off. But as promised, we got one more card to fangirl over today, and it is maybe one of the most talked about cards from the whole set so far. It was actually leaked a couple of days ago in a Reddit post, but I didn't want to cover it until we knew it was 100% real. Thankfully, when I woke up this morning, the first thing I saw was the Masamune. And I say thankfully because I've been kind of internally freaking out about this card for the last 48 hours or so here, and I finally get to talk about it. The Masamune is 3 mana for a legendary equipment that costs 2 to equip. And as long as the equipped creature's attacking, it has first strike, and it has to be blocked if able. That's kind of cute flavor-wise. But the real cool thing about this is that if a creature dying anywhere on the table would cause an ability of the equipped creature to trigger, or if that would cause an emblem you control to trigger, interestingly, then it triggers twice instead. So you get a Panharmonicon on death triggers. And you know I'm going to be into that if you know anything about me. You know, Aristocrats sure was a nice little budget commander build. Not sure it's going to be anymore. But all that aside, this is obviously designed for one guy in mind, which is what everyone's been pointing out about it. And we'll talk about that guy. Don't worry, we'll get there, but I kind of wanted to do something different. I've seen a lot of people saying this card is really only good with the one guy. Again, we'll get there, but this is actually good with a ton of different commanders that you could suit it up with. And so today, we're going to kind of practice for the top 10s that are coming up with a nice little top 10 cards you can shack up a Masamune with. Shack up with a Masamune. I have no idea why those are the words I chose, but I'm sticking by them. Also, I pronounced the word correctly a couple of times already in the video, so that means I get a couple of free rolls on pronouncing it the way I pronounced it until I was like 26 years old. Anyway, the Masamune does work with a ton of really cool commanders, like Sekuar, the Death Keeper over here. Whenever a thing dies, or at least on your side of the table, you get a couple of 3/1 haste now. That is 6 power whenever a tiny dude dies. And you get to play Jund Aristocrats. It's not something you get to do enough, but if you want more tokens, you could also play Brynhildr over here. I've seen this card out in the wild playing games of Commander a couple of times now, once on camera, and this can make a ton of tokens just kind of dry. You know, once you throw a Masamune on Brynhildr, then suddenly you're getting a board full of zombos, so that's pretty gross. Zergo Helm Smasher works if you want to put a bunch of counters. So many counters on this dude, but I guess if you want to put even more counters on a dude, there's Kresh. You could just throw this on a Kresh, and then suddenly, every time he kills a dude, he gets like a billion counters. There's also Shelob and Golgari, if you wanted to do that. The one that is the child of Ungoliant. I think there's a few Shelobs in Magic now. But yeah, this one specifically will make like extra food tokens out of the creatures that die. There's pretty obviously a bunch of Orzhov stuff this works with, and that's what I'm well versed in. So let's look at Retadribik of Urborg, I guess, first. You could do this in standard if you wanted to, but it's probably a little bit too slow. That said, on the commander table, this could be outrageous. But so could old Elasil, my fiance over here, man. Obviously, you could do a bunch of extra death triggers with an Elasil core, and I'll take that because I kind of have to. I think this card has to go in the Elasil core deck, which I'm not super happy about because it's probably going to be like $50 or something, but hopefully it gets down to like $3. It could. It's just a rare. They're going to print the set into the ground. You know what I mean? Like, it's probably going to be... Let's cross our fingers. Might be cheap because I also want to put it in Alinda, the Dusk Rose, or just in the 99 of Elasil Core with Alinda. But yeah, you put this on Alinda and suddenly she gets more counters when creatures die. And then when she dies, it does work that way. You get a bunch of tokens, like twice as many tokens. But to get out of the Orzhov space for a second, I guess, there's also Atla Palani if you wanted to play that. That's kind of neat. Suit this up with the Masamune and then suddenly you'll get like double egg death triggers or whatever, and you'll be able to put like 2 creatures directly onto the battlefield. And that was already like kind of powerful enough as a commander. It just makes it twice as powerful. But like I said earlier, there's definitely one dude that they had in mind when they were cooking this card up. Hail calls victory in the head of Anzrag, the Quake Mole. Obviously, right? You put this thing on an Anzrag, the Quake Mole, and suddenly he gets in with the first strike. It's got to be blocked, so probably going to take out anything that blocks him, and then you get another attack step, and this just lasts all night, and you have a mole party. But I guess Sephiroth, too, sure. Like you probably put this on a Sephiroth, that might work out. Matter of fact, it goes especially well with a Sephiroth because it's the only emblem that really matters with this ability. So I guess, again, they really wanted you to play this with Sephiroth. And maybe you should if you've got $1 billion. How much does a Sephiroth cost? Hold on, everybody. That man is $61, y'all. It's just absolutely no way. Unless you have a printer, I don't know if you're going to be able to put that combo together. But just in case you do, then you live in the high life, bud. I think you're having a great time. But that is it for today, y'all. Make sure you do all the YouTube stuff. Check out the Patreon, of course. And remember that tomorrow we're getting on twitch.tv around 8:30 or so p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And we're going to rate every single card in this set that we know of so far, including tomorrow's previews, for what that's worth. So We might even do the previews for tomorrow first on Twitch and then kind of warm up and then get into the speed run. It kind of depends. Either way, we're going to be doing a lot of Final Fantasy preview stuff tomorrow on Twitch. Make sure you're there. Follow, link in the description, all that stuff. But anyway, guys, let me know how you felt about all the things down there in the comments section. Remember, the Masamune was not the only card of the day, but if you've got other things you can do with it, let me know down there. But I guess that's all. Ski Kowalski. That's it, Ski Lewitsky. I will catch you cats later. I'm Deb from The Place. Thanks for watching, Wizards. Spread love and be kind.